Hello. Testing this microphone before we start this meeting. It's very exciting. I can move it closer to me. Is this better? I can turn up the gain. Is it better now? Can you hear me? I don't want it to get all feedbacky. This is as loud. This is as loud as it gets. Oh, good. Here, I'll turn it down. Okay, I turned it down. Here we go. Is this good? Here. Is this better? Is this better? Is this good? Right here? Or more? I can make it more. I have a... Is there a delay? Okay.
And we're gonna do like a little. The goal is to get everyone together in the conference committee and nail it out, and then after.
Say something again.
What's a pirate's favorite letter? You'd think so, but it's the C. You're welcome. That's the only joke I know.
It's a good one. So yeah, I'm still seeing that. Like I'm still seeing from.
That's what we're gonna say. We want to get this done.
That's all right. A delay is fine. Oh my. That's a lot of delay.
There we go. Okay, so at least it matches up.
Yeah. That's good. It's
Do you
fine.
think that's just related to like
The internet. It's fine. The delay is fine. Yeah.
So again? you're on.
Great. All right, so we're going to call the meeting to order and begin. Thank you for everyone who's waiting patiently. And this will be our October general membership meeting of South Baltimore Neighborhood Association. Thank you all for coming. And we are going to begin with the reports of the officers. So as the president's report, I submitted a report in writing that the secretary has, and I'm going to just touch on some things that we're going to highlight. We have a fairly full agenda today, including some nominations for elections and also a bylaw change. The bylaw change will happen first. So starting on September 15th, and this is going to be some of my activities. On September 15th, I attended with a lot of the people here today the Cross Street Market Happy Hour event that was on September 15th that our Vice President will talk more about during his report when the next one's going to be. On September 16th, we had a discussion with the Federal Hill Main Street, and we talked about the boundaries of South Baltimore Neighborhood Association, and we clarified that the Cross Street area is both South Baltimore Neighborhood Association and the Federal Hill Neighborhood Association. We share that boundary, so we have an interest in anything that happens on the north and the south end, not just on the south end, which was unclear, I think, into that point. So as Federal Hill Main Street does programming and it involves themselves in street closures that are happening on the north end, we still find that relevant because we claim both sides of the street, and that's a shared boundary. If you have a question, by the way, you can just ask it. On September 17th, Rachel Wagner, who's the communications director for Riverside Neighborhood Association, put together a fairly extensive spreadsheet listing the names of all the people who had been victims of the burglaries that were occurring earlier in the month. And it was good to sort of have that all in one place so we can try to work with our partners in the Baltimore Police Department and in the state's attorney's office, trying to coordinate with the victims and make sure they're kept informed and that they are feeling comfortable about the process. That's something that we feel very strongly about. I know I do, and it's going to be one of the focuses of the South Baltimore Neighborhood Association. It's also one of the focuses of Riverside and Federal Hill. So that would be Rachel, Jeff Dewberry, Brad O'Brien, myself, and some other people sort of working together to try to coordinate with people who are victims of crimes in order to make sure that they feel comfortable about the process that's going on. And that's if anyone's interested in doing that, we're always looking for volunteers to help with that, and that's something that's very rewarding because when something serious happens to somebody, after the response and before the court date, there's usually a gap there that we can assist them and try to make them feel more comfortable and try to get services provided to them and sort of advocate on their behalf. So that occurred. On September the 21st, we reached out to the independent federal monitoring team that is looking at the consent decree and asked for a meeting with them. They are actually holding their own public meeting, which is going to be on the 20th, and we'll send something out about that meeting. So if people have a community interest in what's going on with police reform and the consent decree, they can attend the federal monitors meeting, and that meeting will be on the 20th, and then it will be followed up by the meeting that the federal judge has, a hearing actually, on how the consent decree is occurring. So that's something, if you have a community input on the consent decree, that's something that will be available to you on the 20th, and we'll stay tuned for that. One of the other things on September 22nd is, as most people know, the north side of Cross Street has been closed to traffic since the pandemic. They got a special permit, like so many other places did, to close the street down, so people who are sort of locked down with businesses closed would have a place to socialize and do things. And so we are represented through South Baltimore Neighborhood Association with Federal Hill Main Street and have some input about that street closure, what's going to happen. And if you notice, the Federal Hill Main Street has been doing some programming there, more programming. I think tomorrow they're having salsa dancing out there and trying to hold events in that space and make that space more usable, and then working with the businesses so that they have they're actually using that space and it's not just an empty area. that is very complicated what's going on down there, because you have competing interests. You have people who want to load and unload. You have the neighborhood associations that Federal Hill and ourselves that want to use that area for the community to congregate in. And then you also have the business interests that want to do outdoor seating and dining, and everyone sort of has their own opinion. So it hasn't been contentious, but there are a lot of competing things. And so South Baltimore Neighborhood Association is part of that discussion. And if anyone has anything about that cross street closure that they want to bring up in any of those meetings, they can do so by contacting me, and we can bring that to the Main Street, who's sort of coordinating the effort to use that space in a way that's going to be conducive to all those interests, so it benefits the neighborhood in general. So that was on the 22nd. On the 27th, we were contacted by South Baltimore Neighborhood Association, through me, was contacted by someone who had their car stolen and then was down at the city yard trying to get their car back. And we realized that if you have a vehicle stolen in the city of Baltimore and it's recovered and taken to the impound lot, you're not charged impound fees, but you are charged a towing fee. So if you have your car stolen, you're going to get hit with a $136 towing fee. And I think, just by the expressions I'm saying, people don't like that. I don't really like that either. The insurance doesn't pick that up if the car is fine, because most people have a deductible that's not covered under. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is sort of looking at that law and the intent of that law and getting some input and trying to get a coalition together and request a legislative change for that, so that the city is not charging people who have their car stolen a towing recovery fee for having their stolen vehicle picked up so they can get their stolen car back. So that was a discussion we had on the 27th. On the 29th, we met with the property owner, the Secretary Tara, myself, and the Federal Hill Neighborhood Association president met with the, am I stealing your report too? Okay. So we met with the property manager of Wheelhouse Apartments, which is right across from the Cross Street Market, and sort of catty-cornered Mothers, about some noise problems that were occurring there. And that's an ongoing thing. At this point, we're just going to be monitoring. It seemed like one resident had a significant issue, but the other residents didn't. And so we're working very collaboratively with, I'm going to say that Watershed was very receptive to multiple people who inquired about that, about noise levels. And it seems like there's not a general noise problem that we can identify that needs to be immediately addressed. It's just something that we have to monitor, and now we have the contacts with both the residents who live in Wheelhouse and also Cross Street and Watershed and some other people. So if there is a noise violation or this comes up more frequently and becomes problematic, we know who to speak to and we know how to mitigate that, because we're representing the residents, and the people who live in Wheelhouse are within our footprint, and we should look out for their interests. But at this point, we're not going to take that issue any further right now, other than to sort of monitor. I spoke to John Friedel, who's the executive director at Baltimore Station, which is a really great charitable organization that deals with homeless vets. And they have this big chili cook-off, which is at Camden Yards on November the 6th. And South Baltimore Neighborhood Association has been invited to participate in this chili cook-off. I've talked to some of the members who feel like they can cook. I feel like I can cook. I think this would be a good charitable event to get behind. Not only do you participate on the team, but you also get, as part of the getting in there, you get 12 tickets that you can give out to watch the event and taste all the different chilies. And like I said, it's held at Camden Yard. It's for a really good cause. The cost is a $1,500 entry fee. So if we did that, we would have to do some sort of like solicitation to try to raise that to go participate. But I'm going to, I think that's something we should participate in, and maybe under new business, I'll raise that to see if we can look at participating in that event. I've also challenged Brad O'Brien to a one-on-one chili cook-off, and he's the public safety person in Federal Hill, because, and I'm going to double down on this, because we all know the South Baltimore Neighborhood Association cooks better than the Federal Hill Neighborhood Association. And so I figuratively have smacked his face with an oven mitt, and we are engaged in discussing a chili duel that will occur and that also will be to raise money for charity. So October 1st, I spoke to the liquor board about a pub crawl that's going to occur. Tara, did you want to report out on that? Can we hold that to your report? Okay, so Tara will talk about that. October the 5th, I attended an SBNA meeting with some of the other board members to draft a new MOU that's going to go out to the liquor board. I know that some other people are going to report out on that. October the 5th, also attended a board meeting. October the 8th, everyone I think was aware of the reckless driving incidents that were occurring on Key Highway, and I responded to multiple phone calls and emails in reference to that. October the 9th, we had a great tree planting event I'm sure Tom's going to talk about. October the 12th, which is today, I spoke to the new president of Riverside, which is Rich, about the project that's going to occur at the 1900 block of Light Street. And we're going to meet with the project manager tomorrow at 3 by phone and set up what's probably going to be a conference committee where people from both neighborhood associations sit down. And he was very receptive and understanding that the MOU will originate from South Baltimore Neighborhood Association. They can be co-signers, and then we'll work together on a community benefits agreement together in a cooperative kind of manner. And that will be, that's done because it's going to be difficult to enforce an MOU that has multiple neighborhood associations on it. So that is my president's report, and I can take any questions. No questions. Vice President, you're up.
Not much to report. The happy hour for SBNA at Cross Street Market is the 20th, next Wednesday, from 5:30 to 7:30. And it's the same deal. You get 10% off food. It's every vendor that's open in the market. And if it's an old line or cans, there's drink specials. So this is like the 5th one we've done now. Right. So it's kind of the same thing. We're hoping when the weather starts to change a little bit, we're going to get a little bit more traction. So that's all I have.
Great. It's a real fun time at the happy hour. It's also like to get a mixed drink for $5. That's a good deal, and it's a good place to meet your neighbors and socialize and support the market, which is in our area. Tara, you're up.
Secretary's report. The July and September general membership meeting minutes were posted
They were
this
posted.
time, so we have both of them. For any feedback or motion to approve.
Motion approved.
Yeah, motion to approve.
Okay.
Does anyone have any discussion on the minutes that were posted before we approve them and post them?
Where do you post them on the Facebook or on the website?
Website.
The website.
What website?
Yes.
I think I added a link to the Facebook event showing you like where to get to the minutes, but they're on the
Okay,
website.
thank you. Next time.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, now we're going to call on someone who did his civic duty today, right? He rode a bus down and served as a juror in the city of Baltimore. He's not ready yet. So we'll move to our special guest that we have from the Baltimore Police Department. If you want to give your report, sir.
Hey, Officer Owens from NCO, from the NCO unit, I'm also part of the bike unit as well. I can see me riding around here with the yellow shirt somewhere. Pretty much, I mean, he hit on a few of the topics, the burglaries, right now we've had a slight uptick in larcenies, people, car doors, being checked and things like that. But pretty much the biggest issue has been the burglaries in the area. And like you said, you saw the PSA in reference to that, just, keeping everybody aware of locking doors, locking windows, make sure that when you do get out of your car, anything that's of value, not necessarily to you, but to somebody that may be living on the street. There's a lady that had car broken into and all they took was a blanket. Anything that somebody think that they could use, just try to either put it in the trunk or just take it out of the car. Just way it lowers the chance of them wanting something out of your vehicle. I have a slight little bit of stats here, but it's for the whole district, not necessarily you guys' area.
Okay.
it just references the shootings, the homicides, rape, robbery, pretty much the whole gambit. And this goes in between 2020 and today. So pretty much we have a 10% increase in homicides. Now with these percentages, don't like, oh, that's big, because a 10% or something like that might be 2 or 3, but that's significant for us. So homicides was a 10% increase. The non-fatal shootings was a 41% increase. That went from 49 to 69 within the year. Rape has had no change. Robbery was a 1% increase. Aggravated assault was a 2%. Burglaries, that was they increased by 18%. That went up almost 100 cases in between 21 January and then. But that, like I said, that's the whole district. I believe in this area there were about 15 to 20. Larcenies, they're going up, but they only had a 1% increase. Like I've been working overtime the last few days. It's been, I think yesterday it was about 5, just throughout the whole area. Looks like the 4 person will be coming. And auto theft is a 21% increase, and larceny is an 80% decrease. And like I said, in this particular area, the main issue was the burglaries. Like you said, with the that car event that was on Key Highway, that's been going on all over the city. They actually tried to come back the next day and were followed by a helicopter. And every time they went to a different part of the city, even Baltimore County had their helicopter following them, to just keep it moving and not be able to do what they did. I would, like I said, I would just go back to just make sure you guys lock the doors, lock the windows. If there's something that's broken, try to get it fixed. Lighting in the backyards. We had a lady yesterday who got her bike taken. With like the back of her home, like not necessarily the yard, but the alley where it is. It's a little bit dark. There's some lighting back there, just so people can't have the perception of they can't see me. I can do it out.
Great.
Does anybody have any questions?
I just want to I just want to recognize your unit, the bike unit.
Yes.
You sort of are, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong. You're sort of used to help it with community issues, right? Because you have the flexibility.
Yes.
So when we reach out as a neighborhood association and we speak to Sergeant Shetterly, who's the community liaison sergeant, and say, hey, we have a problem here, a problem there. It's this officer and this officer's unit who usually is dispatched to go assist us, and they've been very, very responsive. And I appreciate you being here. So back to the questions.
Hi, Amanda Orther. I live on East Austin Street. I wanted to know what the city's stance is on noise violations. Is that noise violations? Is that a thing we care about enforcing? Because
So it is.
that's been pretty excessive, especially this
On
year.
the weekends, it's I believe it goes to midnight. During the week, it's about 11. So on the weekends, the city generally tries to. If we get a call, we go to the area and be like, hey, keep the noise down, especially at a certain time. But they also can be fined for it.
So,
Can or can't?
Can.
So can I sort of jump on this? So like the scenario would be, you know, residents are trying to sleep. It's 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock at night. You got a group of people coming up, playing loud music, talking really loud, being loud in the street. You know, how do you want to be engaged with that? Like how should they call 911 on that one? And
311, depending on, you know, I would say call 911, but depending on the call volume of that day, that's a priority call, so they may not get to it in a timely manner. Versus 311, they'll be able to facilitate it and fit it in there. Whereas the we can, hey, okay, if there's somebody we can call to see if the person's still there, or if the noises came down, and that way they can figure out whether they still need to send the officer out to deal with, you know, rectify the situation.
Go ahead.
I think
But-
my concern has been the tricycles. they blast their music at like 100 decibels, even
Yes.
at 1 and 2 a.m. And it's normally never just one. It's like 3 or 4.
Yeah, yeah. So
We've had issues with them parking on our street and playing their music while stationary.
if they do that, definitely
Yeah.
call 911. When they're moving, it's a little bit harder to, obviously, we got to respond to that location once we get there. They're probably not even in the area anymore. But if they're stationary, definitely call 911. That way we can address that issue immediately.
Okay.
But movement, it's a little bit harder too, because they'll skirt off, they'll drive off, and the city is not allowed to chase any vehicle for specific reasons. Is the only way they allow us to chase a vehicle. That wouldn't be.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Pam, did you have something?
Yeah, just one more question about that, because obviously noise has been, there's been an uptick in noise problems. So I live on the 1900 block of White Street, and a few of us here actually do. And that, there's been an uptick in noise problems there too, kind of the same, similar kinds of situations. And so I just want to clarify, you said that on a weekday, 11 p.m.
11
So
p.m.
if they're making noise at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., if you're trying to sleep, kind of tough luck, but
Yeah.
11 is when we should really.
Yeah, the
call
city
for
ordinance
more.
is anything after 11 o'clock,
Okay, and midnight only.
and midnight or midnight,
Okay, I appreciate it.
which
We don't
gives,
wanna,
obviously
we don't wanna
gives
just call you guys for.
exception to the bars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you guys' issue is with the rooftop ones. I know they came across our desk, but I don't know what they're doing about that. That's above my head.
We're good with that one for now.
Thank you.
So the 20% spike in the car theft, do you guys attribute that to like more joyrides by kids and recovering these cars, or is it more on the professional side?
It's juvenile. It's juveniles with the opportunity. They'll have them, and with that, most of the time you find that people are recovering their cars within either a few hours or within a couple days. And either they messed the inside of it up or they didn't know what they were doing and crashed it somewhere. But 9 times out of 10, we see that it's been juveniles. Rarely do we ever see like coordinated car thieves here. We have it when they have coordinated people take like it's an uptick in the catalytic converters being taken. That's definitely a coordinated group. But car theft, no. Somebody else.
Is there like an effort being put forth for like the home games now? Because I know with football season starting back up, opening day was like amazing. Like there was like patrols out and like they had at the intersections like kind of directing traffic and stuff. And like immediately once the games were starting, like tow trucks were out there and cars were getting ticketed. But yesterday was just like a free for all, and there was like no one to be like no police presence at all in the area. And I feel like that was like.
So generally, what happens is they have a traffic detail who works outside of the game. That's just to get the people into the games, and they'll have them within certain boundaries. Most of it is coordinated closer to the stadium.
Yeah.
So you'll have someone hand over Ostad, Leadenhall. You'll have officers around that way trying to funnel cars certain ways. Once the game starts, they do go away until after the third quarter, and then they come back and they continue to do the same thing that we were doing. As far as the towing, I did see a couple of city trucks out there because I worked last night, but not like I normally.
Yeah.
Not like I normally.
Yeah, it just seemed like the opening day there was a lot out there. I saw cars just getting.
Yeah, we got a lot of calls yesterday for people illegally parking and things like that. I had two cars parked in the middle of the street. So I don't know whether they had. I know DOT has been having issues getting certified CDL drivers. So that may be why they didn't have as many trucks out last night. I can't really speak to that side of it. But I know for us, we do have groups of people surrounding the stadium doing traffic.
All right. Any other questions for the officer before we move on?
Is there any information on the Civil Cafe or Civil Market break-in? There was a break-in at Civil Market, I believe, yesterday. I was wondering if there was any information on that.
Is that the silver?
That's on
think I read something about
Randall, Topska.
that was on Randall.
It's on Randall, yes.
Okay. Not that I've gotten. I just like I said, I read this and just saw two suspects throw a brick through the window. That ends up going to the citywide because it's commercial burglary. If I do remember correctly, we only handle the local burglaries. I don't know if our DDU unit, which is our district detective unit, is handling the commercial ones. But I can get some information and obviously email.
That would be great. Yeah, if you, we can send a request as well. I know
Okay.
you got stuff to do. Again, thank you for coming to our meeting. I really appreciate it, and also thank you for being responsive. We really we do appreciate especially the bike patrol unit. You guys do great work.
I don't know if Sergeant Shadowman put my email out to you. You can send it out to everybody in the community group.
Great.
And if anybody has any follow-up questions that I didn't cover tonight, or if they have something later on that they think about,
Sure.
shoot me an email and I'll respond back.
Gotcha.
Alright.
And if you could leave a card with us, that would be great if you got one. If you don't have
I don't
one,
have any on me, but next time I'll make sure I have some.
sounds great. Hey, thank you.
Everybody have a good night.
Great. As well. All right, we're going to move next to another special guest, Matt from the Liquor Board, if you wouldn't mind. Thanks.
Where do you want?
You can come to the front if you want, if you don't mind, or you can sit here. You want to take my seat? It's up to you. Yeah, sure.
Anybody online? Can you hear me? So, thanks. Hi, everybody. I guess I'm special. That's cool. Appreciate
You are
it.
special.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I'm Matt Ockhammer. I'm the community liaison with the Liquor Board. Really just popping by to give out my information, say hi, let you know you can contact me for any questions. Tara and I had a long talk about last week with all kinds of other questions. I owe you some answers. I do have one, and that is memorandums of understandings have to go in at renewal or a new license hearing. So, but that is something that we can work on throughout the year. My contact information is matt.ockhammer@baltimorecity.gov. All of this can be found on the Liquor Board's website. Simple Google search for Liquor Board. You're there. And phone number is 410-241-6525 if anybody has any questions. And I'm happy to answer any questions now.
Do you have any questions
anybody
for
has them.
our Liquor Board representative? Great. All
Cool.
right.
Do you want updates on the pub crawl, or have you heard about that? And pass
No,
them
if you
on?
wouldn't mind doing that, that would be
So
great.
there was a question as to whether there was a pub crawl happening in the Fed Hill area. 2016, there was legislation passed that created a pub crawl process, basically. And a company that should have known how to do it did not get the paperwork into the Liquor Board in time. So that pub crawl license will not be able to be issued legally. So that won't be happening. And what that means for us as the agency is we'll be watching to make sure that there isn't an actual pub crawl happening. As you all know, there will be lots of activity on Halloween, whether or not it's an organized pub crawl or not. So our inspectors will all be out there watching throughout the night, as well as I believe there will be coordination with other city agencies, which is hopefully being worked on as we speak. So.
Great, thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, and I just want to recognize how responsive Matt is to us. I mean, we've called him. He met with our secretary, and it's, anytime we have any question, he answers on weekends and at night and whatnot. So thank you for everything that you do.
Yeah, no
I
problem.
appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
One question.
Hey, Mike.
When the inspectors are out, I mean, what authorities do they have and what are they looking for?
Depends on when. Are you talking about the pub crawl specifically, or just in general? Okay. So
You can answer both if you like.
at the pub crawl time, an inspector would be going around, first of all, making sure that nobody is participating in the pub crawl in the form of there's wristbands going out, there's the same deals being offered each place, there's signage that basically ties it all together. That's for the licensees not to be participating in the pub crawl. The other one would be if there happened to be a tent set up selling pub crawl tickets, they would get fined, violated, most likely shut down immediately. So that would be the inspector's time that day. Our inspectors in general, though, when they're going out on routine visits, they're going to be looking through a checklist of things such as health and safety, running bathrooms, water, that kind of thing. On the health side, hot water, that is. We just shut a place down for not having hot water. That was fun. And then on the safety side, no blocked exits, no beer things stacked in front of exit doors, that kind of thing. On the liquor side, they're really looking at, are they up to date with everything in terms of their permits? Are they buying from wholesalers and suppliers like they should? And are they ServSafe certified, that kind of thing? So,
Hey, so you had mentioned this to me before, and it probably we can reiterate this. What happens at like after 10 o'clock at night if they see something that's ongoing? What should they do if they have a complaint?
use 311. And the important thing to note there is use the app or online to get it in immediately. Some people think that 311 stops at 10 because you call the phone line, it tells you that. That's not the case. You can put it in those electronic ways. Our inspectors will see them. As long as it's not a Monday or Tuesday, somebody's going to be on duty, they will get there. Now, if you put it in right at 10 and the inspector happens to be close, they might get there by 10:30 when the action's still happening. If they get there at 12:01, it might be a different story. They might say, arrived and was closed and that kind of thing. But if it's something that's routinely happening, then it gets on our record and it gets in front of the inspectors. They know where to look for and that kind of thing. So,
Great.
Yep.
Matt, thank you again. I appreciate
All
it.
right. As always.
Great.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, now I want to go back to the man of the hour who did his civic duty today at the Clarence Mitchell Courthouse, jury duty. He was in the quiet room and there was a television playing and it irritated him, and that was just he's giving his age away now, right? And Peter, the secretary, can we have your report, please?
Okay.
The treasurer, I'm sorry.
Treasurer.
Yeah, my fault.
$1,974.22 in the account. $670.29 for the East Street Garden. General fund is $1,043.93, and we have $260 in petty cash.
Great, and you were aware that we got 3 new members.
Plus we have 3 more.
Fantastic. It's always good to get new members. Any questions for Peter, the treasurer?
If you're going to vote, next month you got to be paid by the 26th.
Yes.
So you pay online or pay with the
You pay. You take money right here, right? Yeah.
I can change.
Yes. Any questions for the treasurer? Okay, moving on. Let's go to. Should we do our Randall report? Sure. All right. So one of our just to stage this, one of our issues that we've been having is accidents on Randall Street, people turning out from Randall onto Hanover and getting hit. So it's been identified as unsafe, and we're going to introduce Jen Eastman, who's done an incredible job trying to get this together.
Coincidentally, there was an accident yesterday with all the traffic coming in and out for the game. So as of like 4:30 today, I got 71 responses to the Google form that was developed. And one of the questions that we wanted to know was, of the respondents, were they located directly on East Randall, where they would be directly impacted by this change? And so 76% said no, and we had 24% say that they were on East Randall. When I pulled that data out into an Excel document, though, not all addresses were East Randall, so take that for what you will. But of those respondents, we have like 41% wanting an option 2, which would be the continuous one-way eastbound from East Randall all the way to Light Street. About 27% wanting no change, and 32% opting for option 1, which would just be a one-way eastbound route from Randall to Charles, or on Randall from Hanover to Charles, I should say. When I pulled the information, the respondents, the 24% who said that they would be directly impacted, that only turned out to be 17 people, and then 5 opted for option 1, 5 opted for option 2, and 7 opted for no change. Another one of the things that we had solicited was just general comments, and other than going for either of these options, we've had people respond that, whether they indicated a choice for one of the 3 or not, they also suggested traffic calming measures on Hanover, speed cameras, a traffic light, which would be a little too much with the traffic light at Fort and Hanover, A stop sign, also, I think that would be a little too intrusive with traffic coming in and out at that intersection. But also a possible removal of 1 or 2 parking spots for better visibility. Any narrowing or adding poles to help vehicles to slow down. Somebody suggested installing a flashing light. And then a couple people suggested making a no left turn from Randall to Hanover. So I did get an additional respondent, within the past hour. So I don't quite know what that information, how that would tip the scale. But it seems like the continuous one-way on East Randall from South Hanover to Light, has a preference. But I think it's for the most part pretty split. So, and there are other options that can be decided upon. I did reach out to DOT to see if they could provide me any more information as to like the number of incidents. I have yet to hear back, but so I don't know how we want to proceed as a neighborhood association given this information.
Great. So I want to thank Jen. She did, as you can hear, she did a robust job, I think, and an excellent job trying to solicit the community. We got how many responses again?
Like 72.
That's a lot to get 72 people to respond. It's a lot of work to do what she did, and I think it paints a picture of, I think we're pretty split on this issue. So what we're going to do now, I think, first of all, does anyone have any questions of Jen and the methodology she used and like the survey?
What criteria triggered this study? How do we start looking into this intersection as dangerous?
So what precipitated this whole thing was there was a resident that lives on the 1600 block of South Hanover who appealed to Councilman Costello regarding something, and then that request was elevated to Department of Transportation, and they came to us at a neighborhood association meeting a couple months ago saying, we heard that this was an issue, here are our options. So we could do no change, we can do a 1-block change in the opposite direction, or we can do a multi-block change in the opposite direction.
And I believe, just to add, and correct me if I'm wrong, the person actually was in a very significant accident.
Yeah,
themselves.
she got T-boned.
Okay.
Yeah.
With one person, okay, because it's not very logical. He can drive other road around, it's alive. He can exit from that street to go to the light and go and make left turn.
Well, we're gonna discuss all this stuff in a minute, right? But yes. But any questions on the actual survey? What people's response
She
was?
did very good job. I'm really pleased.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Did that answer your question?
It did. I have
Go ahead. Yeah.
more questions.
So we're gonna have so this is how this is gonna work next, right? And then so what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a discussion, and so people can make points for and against. No one's gonna argue with each other. You could say, I believe this because blank, blank, and blank, and make your point, and then the next person will be recognized and they'll be able to make their point. And then we will have, I believe we're gonna have a vote on this. But the board has also had, and I'm going to talk about what the board has sort of wants to put forward as a motion on this one. You don't mind if I do that? Yeah. And then we're going to try to get some kind of resolution. If it's all over the place and we feel like we need some more time to talk about this, that's something that we can do as well. There's no rush on this, but I think it's important that since it does impact people, and since I believe that this is identified as a hazard. You just said you just saw someone get in an accident there. We know of another person who has. So we know we have a hazard that's occurring, and then we're looking at the best way to mitigate it without ruining the quality of life of the people who live there. I think that's sort of like where we're at right now. So did that sort of answer where we're going to go next? And you can, or do you have more questions?
I have a kind of side discussion, so you just proceed and I'll bring it up after that.
You sure?
Yeah, there's another intersection that we tried doing this for, where we were this weekend, Tosco and Austin. There's been a number of accidents there. The city actually installed a traffic monitor for months to monitor how many accidents or near accidents happen, and they decided that we were just shy of the criteria to warrant anything further. And their decision was to do nothing. We didn't get any options, so we were asking for a traffic light, and there was an accident there last night. We walked by it.
And that's much heavier area and much more traffic down there.
And it's also, it's like a curious, like, oh, that's great that you guys got that far and have all these options.
Great. Yeah, this was Frank Murphy who came in, who I believe is the head of their traffic engineering division, and he was the acting director of DOT for a little while. So it was really cool to see that level of engagement from DOT, just like you're saying. I was surprised they came in like that, but they did, and these are our options, and this is sort of where we're at right now. But you know.
Install a traffic monitor in that corner?
No, well, maybe they have information already that there were a significant amount of. I don't know what their methodology.
That was one of my requests with when I emailed them to say what information did you have that would warrant proposing this change.
I wonder why they said not our intersection with this house.
And just the other thing I want to add before we get into the discussion. So every house from Hanover Street down to Light Street on Randall received a flyer taped to their door that advised them that this was going on, and also that the South Baltimore Neighborhood Association was discussing this at the previous meeting. So there's been a lot of notification to the community that this process has been engaged in, and this body would be the one who would be voting and making a recommendation, right, to DOT. Yep. Cool. All right. So we're going to have a discussion now, I guess. So if you want to be recognized and talk about something, I'm going to start. I'm going to start with Tom, actually, right? If you don't mind, and I'm going to put Tom on the spot because Tom is I think for a living you look at accident mitigation, don't you?
Yeah, to some degree. So I work for the MTA, and nowadays I do mostly like field work involving risk mitigation and reduction and stuff. So
right.
I think the 3 suggestions that were given to us, well, 2 of them, because the third one's not do anything at all. So we know that there's a risk of accidents here. There's the hazard of collisions between cars, probably because there's bad visibility turning left, kind of like Amanda was just saying. So reversing the flow there is going to eliminate the left-hand turn, which is the best possible solution. Just eliminate it altogether. So I would say, from my perspective, that doing one of the 2 options that we do something is best, and then the only decision is which one do we do. During earlier discussions, we discussed both of those, and one of the other key factors is based on what we, in order to figure out what we want to do, we need to ask ourselves, are we making more hazards, or making the situation worse in other ways that we didn't anticipate? So one point that was brought up was, if we reverse the entire length of the proposed area, then basically the entire length of Randall Street all the way over into Riverside is the same direction, and that would create a route for excess traffic to cross the entire peninsula. So that might pose an additional hazard that we wouldn't want to create. But by leaving part of Randall as it is, but only reversing one block, may be able to eliminate the left-hand turn issue at Hanover, while also not creating a unanticipated traffic flow that we don't want to necessarily have.
Great, thank you, Tom. Does anyone else want to speak on this issue or raise a point?
I have a question.
Sure.
So we mentioned that there's 2 options.
Yes.
One is to reverse the one-way. What's the other option?
One is to reverse the one-way 1 block, and the other one is to reverse it the entire way to Light Street, right? And so, yeah, there's a third is no change, right? Right. Anyone want to raise a discussion point to this? Yes.
Well, I would have to kind of pull out of those people on that block what were their reasoning, what additional comments they provided as to why they elected the option that they elected. But there were, in general, across the 71 responses that I looked at, there were other there were other options and suggestions that didn't involve reversing any streets. I mean, I typically, because I'm on the 1500 block of South Hanover, so when I come down Randall, if I really need to go left, I pretty much just go around. I make a right and I go around.
That's what I do.
I don't want to take the chance because I can't see, and there is an additional parking spot that is so close to that corner that really should be removed at the very least. But I'm also not going to, propose to remove the parking spot because I need it. You know, and if you say no right, if you say right turn only, that may work for some people, but certainly not for others. So, you know, I think that there needs to be something.
Some comments here. I think my other question would be, what's the measure of effectiveness of whatever we vote today? Like at what point would, you said we don't want to cause worse, how would we know if we've made it worse or better? Especially if you said you know statistics of the accident.
Not yet, yeah. And I don't know in terms of if we say yes to an option that only reverses the direction of one block, what is the time frame? When are they going to start? When are they going to finish? How are they going to communicate that to the community? You know, and incidents. You know, what is the number of incidents that kind of precipitate this? So I think that there does need to be some more engagement with DOT to just kind of get all those details ironed out.
So voting today wouldn't necessarily make that happen next week. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we vote today, then I think that means that we're communicating to DOT what our preference is.
And like she said, it's our preference. That doesn't mean that's what they're going to do. They just want neighborhood input into this. And we've also encouraged residents to reach out directly to them so that if they don't agree with what we decide today, that they're still making their voices heard to DOT. So we don't get to be the decider. We're just providing them additional feedback.
I think it's also important to note that if you reverse it, the Randall and Charles will now be a 4-way stop, where now it's currently just a 3-way. So.
Well, if you just reverse it for that one.
For that one block.
I mean, if you reverse it all the way, that Charles Street still becomes a 4-way stop.
Yeah, and then Light Street would be a 4-way stop
Right.
as well.
Okay, does anyone feel super strongly about this in any way? Go ahead.
I'm new to the neighborhood, actually, very close to my house.
No.
I don't feel, I should say strongly, but if the community's so split, basically 3 ways, the option of going all the way down to Light Street seems like the most extreme measure. So I struggle to understand why we wouldn't just do the 1 block, and if that's, if there's repercussions, I mean, this gentleman over here just talked about, the law of unintended consequences. It seems like, to me, that's the obvious choice of let's baby step into this instead of going for the whole 9.
So does anyone else have any other discussion points? Yeah, Mike.
In the same line, two-thirds are in favor of making the change, right? One of the 2 options, right? On the other side of that, as Amber just mentioned, we don't know the criteria which this raised to for DOT to do the study and propose research and engineer 2 solutions to a problem that they decided existed or a risk that they wanted to mitigate through these changes. But having what faith I will have involved in city government and DOT, we'll assume it achieved that threshold. I feel like we should act on it. It's not urgent, but I think it is something that should be acted on. It is a problem. We've put other traffic mitigation in place on Hanover Street. It has been a challenge for a decade or more. That's what the medians are there for, to slow people down. Because there were accidents happening on Hanover Street where people were getting rear-ended, including a patrol car at one point before the median went in. So, I'm moving forward, and the measure that makes the least change and address the risk seems like the obvious choice.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, so when you're thinking about going down Hanover Street, can you only make a left turn off of Hanover Street into the neighborhood at traffic lights right now? Like, how many points are there?
You can make a left at Barney.
At Barney.
There's no traffic light there. The only traffic light is Ostend, Fort.
Wells, yeah, that's a traffic light.
Wells.
Yeah.
And then all the way down at Montgomery.
Okay.
Okay.
I was thinking if that would
All right.
attract more people through different routes.
Thanks, Megan. All right, so we have someone out on at 33 and 35 Randall Street who have commented in, and they believe that the vote should be left to them, and that this will also increase the flow of traffic on Randall Street, which is not acceptable. We do not agree with this change as residents of 33 and 35 East Randall Street. And they're directly impacted. So like I want you to take into that consideration. Any other discussion on this? All
Can
right.
you clarify which change?
Yeah.
I mean, just to change the one block, just diverts some traffic to Charles Street versus, going all the way to Light Street.
Say it again, sorry.
Did they specify which change that they oppose? Do they oppose
They want no
any change? Or
That's what it sounded like.
That's what sounds, that they.
So for the resident at 33 and 35, if you wanted no change, could you put that in the comment box so we clarify? It sounds like you're opposing the change, running it all the way down to Light Street, but we're not certain if you're opposing the change, just changing the first block, so you can't turn off of you can't turn from Hanover. You can't turn off of Randall onto Hanover Street.
Yeah, because that would make sense.
All right.
There's a lag.
Yeah, and so while we're waiting for them to respond, so where I think we sort of landed from a board discussion that we had is that we all agree that there's a hazard here, right? That cars are getting in accidents, and there's something that needs to be done, right? And I think that is also something that we saw in Jen's survey, is like what Mike just said, is that 2/3 of the people believe that something should occur, right? So the question then goes back to, do we make a dramatic change, which we run it all the way down, or we do just one block, which we could always add the additional street at a later date. And I think the board prior to this discussion was sort of leaning that way, that our recommendation was that we would make the change that only changed the one block. I think that's where we were. But this is not up for the board to make the decision. This is just, I want you to know that the board discussed this with the information we had, and we sort of landed on this one block being the change. All right, so it looks like, do we have anything? Amy, do you want to type in which option that you want? Do you want the no change, the one block, or all the way to Light Street? And we'll wait for your response. Okay, so we're gonna table this for a second, and we're gonna go on to another report. Evan, do you have a report? Go ahead, Mike.
I sort of make one regarding
Sure.
not taking a position.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, this and many other things like this, we exist to try to educate people on these options, help interface with the local government and other entities, right, and build consensus and take a position, right. So
Right.
not taking a position, I think, wouldn't be an appropriate thing to do.
Got it.
We're supposed to do that outreach, let people be aware of that, take in input from as many residents as we can, and and provide some guidance to the local government.
Right, and also, worst case scenario, we make a vote tonight. It's not a bylaw vote, right? People can come in the next meeting and say we're absolutely opposed, and we can continue this discussion all the way to when they change it. So like, a recommendation doesn't mean that it's written in stone, and that's the way it has to be from now on.
And they can share with DOT.
Right.
They can-
Megan.
I just have one more comment. It would be really nice to get more information from DOT and like what they're, like none of us in this room, we can have opinions on how we use Randall Street, but we're not traffic calming experts, none of us are, I don't think. So it would be nice if we could get more information from DOT about like how they looked at this, why they came up with this, just the one way, why they didn't think that any other traffic calming measures on Hanover would work instead, why no right turn would work, that kind of thing. So it would be nice if, like, are these the only options? And
It was
The resident proposed the solution.
I mean,
DOT didn't. DOT didn't.
No, they did. The resident asked for something, and DOT Frank Murphy, who's the traffic engineer, came back and said we could do these three things.
so I think there's your answer.
They initially suggested.
They suggested.
A traffic light.
Yeah.
The resident suggested
Yeah,
a traffic light.
which
Okay.
Not ours.
So we just got a response from the Randall Street that the one block is better, right? So
that makes sense
we
because
did.
they live in the block between Charles and Light, so
Okay.
Their street won't change.
their won't change.
Understood, but that this is like a representative kind of thing. This is why we're voting. All right. At this point, is there any other discussion points that people want to make on this issue? No? Does anyone want to put a motion on the floor? It's like modified Robert's rules. Does anyone want to put a motion on the floor about what they want this to look like? If we're gonna vote on something.
I think we should table until we hear back from DOT.
Okay, so you want to bring them back in here, and
I don't know that we need DOT back.
Or at least respond to Jen's query.
okay, we can do that. So.
Or, alternatively, vote on your recommendation today, like you're saying, it's just a recommendation, and have a follow-up action like when that information is available, it's made public through your meeting minutes. Like, hey, we finally got a response back, this is the data we got to date.
But what is it we're looking for from DOT that they kind of haven't
It's just a
already provided?
baseline, here's what it was before we did this, and then maybe we check back with them.
I just want to. I'll just be real quick. So we have two things we could do. One, we could table this issue for another meeting, right, and address it at the next meeting. The purpose for that would be to what, Mike?
Allow us to have DOT provide a response on what threshold triggered the study, and if these are the only two options.
Okay.
So
Anyone?
that's-
Anyone?
I
Anyone?
disagree. I think that's kicking the can down the road and nothing's going to happen.
Okay, I'm sorry. So Mike is saying that we should table this, get more info from DOT about why they came up with these options and what.
I think they came up with the options because it's the only two options. I think we're going to ask them. They're going to say, well, we gave you the options. We can change it, the direction 1 block or 2 blocks, or not change it at all, which makes it 3 options. We gave it to you to get community input to find out what people want, so you can make a recommendation. Now we're kicking it another month down the road.
Okay.
And it's just nothing's going to happen.
And I think what Amanda's saying is sort of similar to what Mike's saying and what you're saying. You're compromising on the two of them. Let's take a vote and bring them in and have them discuss what this would look like, and then there'll still be option to modify that at a later date. Is that what I'm hearing?
If it's a safety issue, you're saying earlier doing something is better than nothing, so take the position you guys are leaning towards, and then just backfill the data, like this is what we got, of how bad it was prior to us taking this measure, and then maybe we follow back up with DOT when they have more data down the road after the change to know that it's definitely improved that safety issue.
Let's yeah, okay. Go ahead.
So if I'm understanding it correctly, that's what I'm getting right. The idea is that we get that data not to inform our decision tonight so much as so that we can adequately judge the effectiveness of our change later. That way we still address it now, but we make sure we've got all the information as a baseline so that we know whether or not we improved or degraded the situation down the road.
Because we're making the assumption in good faith that anecdotally there's been enough evidence of accidents there.
And that's why it ended up in our lap.
Okay.
That's
All right, so let me do this. Is anybody here going to make a motion that we do nothing, right? And we should vote on that. Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion that we should vote on the option that changes Light Street, changes it the entire way down to Light Street? Does anyone want to bring that up for a motion to vote on that? Does anyone want to bring up that we're going to change it that 1 block and vote on that tonight? Okay, so we have a bunch of people who want to do that, right? So let's let's do that. Is there any discussion on this one that one item, right? Changing it to 1 block. Does anyone want to talk about that? And I think we've already talked about that. If we vote on that, then we should bring DOT in to discuss what that would look like and get greater detail and have them here where people can ask questions, right? So the motion will say we'll vote on that. Say that this is what we preliminarily, we could use that word, preliminarily have decided based on you providing more information about what this would look like, right? Does everyone feel comfortable about that? Tara, do you have that sort of down? All right. Does anyone else want to throw out any discussion about that? Tim?
Well, I thought the motion was neighborhood association's position is that if DOT, it's not ultimately our decision, if DOT decides to make the change, our input is that we would prefer the 1 block. Additionally to that, we would like information so that we can adequately judge the effectiveness of it, but we don't want the information so that we can then go and inform our decision later. We have the decision, we want to be able to effectively gauge how effective our decision was.
Yeah, but I think that limits us because if they come in and say something that we really dislike, right, we would want to be able to undo that decision, right, I think. We would do it anyway, though, right?
So the motion would have
Okay.
to change for that.
I got you.
At that time, make a new motion.
I understand.
and the other thing, just a side note.
I got it, yeah.
This was Kevin Lynch put this out. It was all over Facebook.
Sure.
So
I talked to him today about
yeah,
it. Yeah.
I mean, there was, however many people chiming in.
All right.
Or whatever.
I got it. All right. Does anyone have any more discussion points based on this, and then we'll call it to a vote, right? All right. So Tara, will you read back what the motion
So I think
is that we're voting on?
The SBNA will support reversing the one-way on Randall Street between Hanover and Charles.
And
And that we're requesting that DOIT provide what criteria they use to make that decision, so that we can use that at a later date to determine the effectiveness of the change.
is everyone cool about that, the way that's written? Okay, all in favor well, first of all, you have to be a member to vote, so don't vote if you're not a member, right? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Okay, so the ayes have it, so that's the way it will go down. Thank you. All right, moving on.
Good work.
That's making decisions.
That's making it happen here at your neighborhood
We almost
association
got
tonight.
something done.
Yeah.
If I could just add too.
Go ahead.
In the event that we can't get Dot to come to next meeting, if we want to have a couple of us have a meeting with Dot in advance of and bring up these issues and seek clarification, then feel free to send questions my way.
Right, and how can they get in touch with you?
My name Jennifer Eastman, 127@gmail.com.
Thank you. Great. All right, report from Evan.
Don't have a separate report.
No report from Evan. Tim, do you have a report? And you can take my seat.
Well, it's not much of a report. We just sent out some. So we're going to do the community pitch-in dumpster will be November 13th. That's the second Saturday in November. Location right now, it's tentatively for Austin and Hanover, right by the fire department there. But if there's something in the community that comes up, we do have the option to move it. But that's tentatively where it'll be at. Non-hazardous household trash, so like no paint cans, no propane tanks, no refrigerant, but otherwise. And I know most people, the main question is what time. It will arrive sometime between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. And then we have it for 4 hours after it arrives. There will be a post on our site whenever it actually shows up.
Where? I'm sorry. I was reading.
Austin and Hanover, tentatively. The location,
Miles.
right.
Yeah.
The location will be with that post as well. Like I said, if there's something that comes up, a bar that wants to do a cleanup in the area, or there's some type of other clean and green activity, we can shift to try to support that. But that's right now where we're looking at having it.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Any
Without
questions about that? Awesome. Megan, you want to make your report?
Sure. Scoot over here. Okay, so Megan Spindler, Communications Chair. Big news from Communications is that we are on YouTube now and not Microsoft Teams. So it seems to be working. Yeah, it seems to be working better. The downside to that is that we can't hear people, but we do have a comment feed going that seems to be working decently. So that means SBNA has a YouTube channel, so you can all find us on YouTube. Subscribe. I think we have one subscriber, and that might be Mike. I haven't even subscribed yet, so. But yeah, so I think we get perks if we hit like 1,000. Probably won't happen. Anyway, I added a page to our website about Amazon Smile and how you can sign up for that. So that was, I think, Ryan's suggestion last week. So that's up there, and I do want to make a post about that at some point. So again, you can support SBNA by using smile.amazon.com instead of just amazon.com, and they give a small percentage of proceeds from any of your transactions on that to a charitable organization that you select. You can select SBNA through that. So thanks for that suggestion. And we have been working with the Image Center with City Youth. What's it called? City Youth Works?
Correct. To
get sweatshirts, so that's in progress as well.
So a very cool SBNA sweatshirt is coming our way. And Rashid, who presented at the last meeting about the great work that he's doing with youth up on North Avenue, will be making our sweatshirts for us.
Yes. Other than that, just highlights from the social media feeds. People really like before and after pictures of trees, it seems like. So of tree pits that are very weedy and then not weedy and nice. So that seemed to get a lot of traction this month. That's about all I got.
Great, thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Megan does great work for our communications, managing our Facebook site and our Instagram, and now our YouTube. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. Mike Murphy.
No report.
No report from Mike. No RPP. No LDC. No.
Steve Robinson has moved to downtown partnership, so there'll be a new manager at some point.
Great. Cool.
Renewals in December.
Gotcha. And now for the man of the hour, the man with the hat, the clean and green. Tom, you're up. And here he comes.
I'm not going to sit, so I'm just going to speak. So. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for all our volunteers that came out on Saturday. We were able to achieve all the tree plantings that we were looking to do this fall. We took on 10 really difficult locations, most of them along Austin Street. And I feel like we've really made a big difference along that street too, sorely needed. So I'm just going to give you all a round of applause because it was really helpful. Good job. All of us were very sore the day after. Digging holes. It was not easy. It turns out what's under the ground in Baltimore is really tough. So like I said, we did it. Our goal was to do 10 trees this fall. We did 11. So we were one up on our goal. For next year, we're trying to make this at least a yearly thing, at least initially. So some of our volunteers have been working with me to identify additional places. We have more than enough candidates to do at least another 10 next year. The goal is to do 10 actual trees and then prep 10 additional sites for the following year. So this is kind of like a pipeline kind of thing. And over the course of time, we're going to try to get the neighborhood planted up as best we can so that, 50 years from now, we have a bunch of real nice trees. So if you are a person that's nearby one of the trees that we planted, like you, for sure, actually your tree is a special case. It does need to be watered a little bit because we chopped it. It does, yeah, because we cut a lot of the roots. It was really badly root bound. So we had to cut a bunch of the roots off. So just make sure that stays watered. If you're nearby any of the other trees, I would keep an eye on them, make sure they don't get smashed up, run into. If you noticed any damage, then reach out to me. We can repair stakes and ties and things. Make sure they're watered, at least until it starts really getting cold. It was supposed to have rained this weekend, but it didn't. It hasn't really rained at all since about last Thursday. So things are actually kind of dry. Which is deceiving. So make sure you're watering your tree if it's around, and that will help it establish itself for next year. Looking into the future for the rest of this year, we don't have too much going on now. Kind of like the trees, we're going to kind of go dormant. But the mayor's cleanup is coming up. So the city does a fall cleanup, kind of like we did in the spring. That is on the 23rd of October. We're not gonna do anything too big, but there's discussion of maybe just gathering up at the Heath Street Garden that day and roaming aimlessly around South Baltimore picking trash up. So if we actually make that into a real event, if there's a lot of interest, then we'll make it into an event.
So
yes.
You should touch base. You should touch base with Andrew and John Ferguson from
Andrew.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Andrew.
Yeah.
And John Ferguson from Hair of the Dog, because they facilitated the first one, so they drove around with trucks that provided drinks and donuts and stuff like that. And I know they would do it again because they've asked, so they would be.
They helped us in the spring too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they would definitely be.
Well, we are. It's this is the 12th and it's the 23rd, so we got 11 days to put something. I don't want to go too big, but I will talk to Andrew and see if he's interested, and if there's a lot of, if there's a lot of support, then we can do something like that.
I think we might need to give them some time, but
yeah,
it's something we could do all the time almost. So
But Greg, what you're saying, if anyone can make it happen, it's Tom here, right?
Yo, it's definitely.
That's what I think too. Right.
We'll see. We'll see. So,
I'll
so
do
that.
what I can. I'm a whale.
All right, great. So next year, I think we actually already have our spots picked out. So that's nice. But if you ever have any input about street trees and things in the neighborhood, reach out to me and I'll coordinate that and record it and whatever else. So, any questions?
No, I just.
This question.
Confirming there's no number 3 for tree planting this year on the 17th?
Should be canceled.
Yeah, no, that we are done. So that is, we'll check and make sure that we've knocked that down on Facebook and wherever else.
If it's not, I'll let me know. I'll look at it.
But we +1 their goal, right?
Yes, yeah, and what's more, I mean, we were able to do several days worth of work in one day, mostly because of folks like Mike who were halfway down in a hole trying to dig up all the rocks and bricks.
Well done.
Tara, did you have a question?
Oh, I was just gonna say that I really like the little signs that you guys added to let everybody know that was the cleaning and greening. That was a really nice touch.
Yep. So that's
That was provided. What is his company?
that one's from Duo Graphics. Woody, who's runs the community garden. His name's John Wood, but everybody calls him Woody. And he's actually working to get us additional signs. So I've requested new ones. One that says future home of a tree to be planted by SBNA, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to, put one of them in places we've identified. And then one that said this tree is planted by SBNA and Tree Baltimore. So that one will probably replace the ones you've seen. And then it'll be, a little bit more obvious, try to get some involvement. Because a lot of people, we were out there planting trees. A lot of people were interested and wanted to reach out. And so that's a good thing. Hopefully we can build on that because some of these tree pits are very hard. So we need all the volunteer work we can get.
Peter, do you have a question? Got it.
Yeah.
The ones that you've identified for next year, can they go ahead and be like mulch to start getting the soil a little? You can think about it.
We'll look into it.
Gotcha. We'll bring that up.
I'm
on
pretty
the new
tired.
business.
All right.
Thanks, Tom. You do an excellent job. Appreciate it. All right, so we've done the reports of the officers. We're going to move on to we have a bylaw change that's been put in. Tara, do you have the bylaw change written down anywhere? Do we have that? I think Megan might have it. Hold on. And while she's looking it up, the purpose of this bylaw is we found out going into this election cycle that most of the board members would be term limited out.
That's the bylaw. That's the notes from last meeting.
Which one? Okay, so and we didn't want that. So the bylaw change would say for the 2021 election only, officers are not term limited and may run for a third term in office. That's the way the bylaw would read. We announced it at the last meeting, and we're going to discuss it and vote on it at this meeting, and then it would go into effect for the following meeting. So is there any discussion on not term limiting the officers this time around so they can run for office for the next 2 years? And that would only be for this election cycle. And that's due to COVID, the change of presidency, and also because you have me, a new president in, and didn't want to lose this entire board who was term limited out.
Institutional knowledge.
Vice President, Treasurer, and Secretary, yes. Which are the officers. Any questions about that?
So where we can permanently enshrine the secretary and treasurer?
Yes, but not in this moment. We can't do that. Yeah. The bylaw change process, we could actually do that, but that's not up
It
tonight.
would be a bust similar to that.
Right.
Raven.
All right. Exactly. Let's see what the crow has to say. Any discussion? No? Okay. So I'm going to call it for a vote. All in favor of the bylaw change, and Megan, if you wouldn't mind reading it again.
It says for the 2021 election only, officers are not term limited and may run for a third term in office.
All right, so all in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Members only. Any opposed? Okay, passes. Great, good. All right, now we can do the next thing, which is to seek nominations for the board and also for the officers' positions, which will be held, a vote will be held by members at the next meeting. And when do they have to become a member if they want to vote?
15 days prior.
25th or 26th.
Okay, so if you're not...
I think he was at the 26th.
If you're not a member and you join today, you can vote in the election, which will be held at the November general meeting.
October 26th, right?
Correct. Yeah, October 26th. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll seek people who want to run for office for the board or for the officer positions, and then if it's a contested election, then we will create a ballot, and then people will be able to vote at the next election. If it's not, then I guess it just, how does that work, Mike? If
Still vote.
you still vote?
Yeah, because people can run as a
Who's
write-ins.
here?
Okay, then run as a write-in.
You can run as a write-in.
Can you?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So seeking nomination. So I'm going to nominate the Greg, Tara, and Pete and Pete for the same office positions. Do you guys would you accept that if we did?
I accept.
Do you still want to be the treasurer? All right. Does anyone else want any of those positions?
Enthusiastic acceptance.
All right. All right. Now for the current people who are sitting on the board, right? So I'll nominate all those board members unless someone else wants to run on the board. Does anyone in here want to run who's not currently a board member, who's a member? For any position. Well, that was easy. Okay, so
These are the 5 board members, right?
yeah, do you just want to read that out to sort of like as a summary for Tara, if you don't mind?
Yeah, just so Sam nominated the current board members who are Tim, Evan, Mike, Meg, me, and Jen Eastman.
Great. You all willing to accept those positions if you're voted in? Yes?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. And anybody else? All right, moving on. New business.
Hold on one second. Who were the board members nominated?
Tim,
The current ones.
You know us all.
Evan, Jen, Mike.
We vacation.
Okay. Actually, it's old business. Is there anything that we talked about at the last meeting or previous meeting that someone
Wait,
wants?
I have one more election question.
Yeah, go ahead. Absolutely.
We did say in the notes that the committee needed to create, abolish, and establish a remote voting plan.
Okay.
But I believe when we met as a board and decided on our new hybrid meetings that it would just be for people to listen, and that was it, that we wouldn't have to do that. And so maybe we should announce formally that there will be no online voting option. If that's what we're doing, that you have to be present to vote.
Let me check the bylaws. Let me check the bylaws on that one and make sure that we're not violating the bylaws by doing that. I don't think that there is a provision for people to vote remotely.
I don't think that existed before COVID,
Yeah.
so that wasn't even a thing.
Say again?
We always used to vote only here.
Yeah, that's what I believe too. Right.
Yeah, I just feel like we should start publicizing that so people don't think they can send you a comment.
Yeah, as long as we put it out there.
Yeah, that's good. Perfect.
I mean, there's also no harm in accepting votes over the YouTube channel commenting.
We could send out a Google form. You just have to double check that they are members, but we
Right.
could do that after the fact. I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. We have, 7
The
people.
one time, the one time we did try to do the online vote, it was pretty contentious. People were upset about the way we were trying to verify it.
Well,
You know, I think it's just an issue if you don't let people know who are tuning in virtually that they can't vote,
Right.
or that they can. Because I feel like during the pandemic when, it was all virtual and then it went to this hybrid, I was still unclear when I was tuning in virtually whether I could vote or not. So I think that maybe we just need to kind of make an announcement before any votes, at least, to your point, just to let people know one way or the other.
all right. So let me do this. We had discussed this too. That since I'm not running, then I'll be the election committee. So I'll get that out within a week, right? Through like what the rules are, yes, no, and all that. Is anyone else want to sit on, who's not running, want to sit on the election committee with me? Okay, Tom. So Tom and I will make up the election committee. Anybody else? Okay, great. And we'll get that out ASAP. So people either know how to vote or how not to vote. Right. All right. Old business. Anything that we were talking about at previous meetings that is left unresolved? Does anyone want to talk about the crime incidents that are happening? I know we sort of had some discussion there. Is there anything anyone wants to know about that? No? Okay. Any new business? Anyone want to bring something up new? Go ahead.
Well, we're talking about the mortgage, about doing our side of Light Street is very clear.
Is doing what now?
Our side of Light Street,
We were talking about that. No, do you want to bring that up for discussion? Okay. That goes to you, Mike. So for those who didn't hear, the question was looking at Light Street, at the bottom of Light Street, which is not currently in the parking area 30, looking at bringing that into area 30.
Before we do that, Mike, can you clarify what the jurisdiction of SBNA is over Area 30 and whether that is an issue for SBNA as an organization to vote on, or if that is an individual property owner to petition in sort of question?
So from a process standpoint, we own whether a petition is issued or not. So, and then whether a property participates in is decided by the owner. I don't know if it's a percentage of the owners, but the owners for that block need to petition into that RPP zone. So if we were going to bring a new block, a new section of area, a new section of currently street parking into area 30 and bring that under the jurisdiction of area RPP and area 30, SBNA would need to request a petition be issued by the parking authority. Then there would be a set period of time where X number of homeowners or all within each block that wanted to become participants in area 30 would need to sign off on that. The parking authority then goes through and verifies those signatures, and if they meet that legal threshold, then they would go out and put signage up for that. So, that's the way a block goes in. Now, it has to be a block that is adjacent to area 30 in some way. Now, so we can just go and issue a block of area 30 permits in front of Riverside Park, right? Because it's not contiguous with anything that's currently part of area 30 RPP. So the reason that's just the technicalities around that. The reason this is coming up as an item to discuss is, because I guess as long as area, 20, 30 years, however long it's been, Riverside has been, rather, South Feather Hill's been area 19, right? Riverside did not have RPP. We were area 30. Light Street, the person that wasn't part of SBNA that managed area 30 refused to issue area 30 permits to Light Street for the east side of Light Street going up, right? Because then that would disadvantage the homeowners on the east side of Light Street, or whatever on the number side is. So Riverside has gone through and they've now set up area 48, area 48, and they're starting to issue petitions and bring blocks in, and they're allowing Light Street to petition in to area 48 where it joins that. So it's starting to impact people on Light Street that are adjacent to area 30. And so what was fairly settled for about 10 years is now that area 48 is going through, is creating some parking issues for people that didn't have issues previously, as area 48 takes over spots that they would previously park in. If they live An example property is the men's shelter that was recently converted into 4 row houses at the corner of Hanover, Clement, and with Olive at the rear, right? So that's 8 or 10 properties, right? Get out of that between both sides.
10.
So
10.
10. Yeah, so 10. So, you know, that frontage on Hanover Street and the bit on Clement right now is not part of Area 30.
Okay, I see.
And, you know, we evaluated that, and we're not gonna issue a permit for, rather, we will not issue a petition for the properties to be brought into Area 30.
And could you just say why? Because
Right, because that would then in turn, they would be as members of Area 30 for those properties, if they chose to enter into that as property owners, right? Then that would mean that for Area 30, which is already oversubscribed,
by what, if you know?
180%.
Yeah.
Spaces versus permits.
Right.
You know, that would mean we gain possibly 6, 7 spaces, and we would entitle people to 40 stickers, right, 4 per property, and then 10 visitor passes.
Well, used to be
So
only
we
2
would
per
gain
property.
7 spaces and create entitlement for another 50
Because
cars.
because
How
it's
would we gain 7
because
spaces?
the spots in front of the place are not in the RPP.
Well, Clement,
No, they're not. The sign stopped where that final property is where the sign points down for Area 30. So from
So-
that property line to Clement, it is open parking technically.
So let's do this. I think Peter raised an interesting point. I think that there's a lot of interest in this, right? And there'll continue to be a lot of interest in this. I want to put this on the agenda of the next meeting because we've covered a lot tonight, right? And we're already at an hour and a half. Is that okay with everybody? We'll put this as an agenda item on the next meeting. Any other?
In the interim, can
Yes.
we like petition or not petition, but like solicit those property owners to see if they would even be interested in joining Area 30 versus joining 48? 'Cause, I mean, it's really up to the property owner. Because I mean, they have to opt in to whichever it is. So I mean, if they would rather go to the what is right now a more exclusive Area 48 versus Area 30, they might not even be interested in joining Area 30.
So Light Street is also a boundary where Riverside is one side and we claim both and Riverside claims both. Is that correct?
Are the RPP lines not allowed to cross neighborhood association lines?
No.
no.
No, because they have some of Light Street in 48 already. There was some discussion, and some of Light Street is Area 48 now. The goal is to try to not make it so that if you live on a street, you can only park on one side of that street because the other side's a different RPP. That becomes very problematic. This is one of these exercises where it's almost guaranteed someone's going to get very unhappy when we start making these which is why I want to table it for the next meeting. Otherwise, this will go on significantly. But I think your point is relevant, and Tom lives on that block, and I think he's willing to solve this issue for us right now. Go ahead.
There we go, right? So
Can you put the hat on when you respond?
I think we should. Tabling that to the next meeting is fine because it's always going to be an open topic. So that's sensible, but I think we should also, maybe I'll make a motion to have a discussion with Riverside about it.
We can do that.
In a way that's like
Is
sensible
that-
and
is that-
long term
that
kind
work?
of thing, so that we can figure it out.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and I think we can just do that. Because we're meeting with them anyway about another issue.
If we wait a month, I don't know how fast the RPP process moves. If we wait a month, is the decision going to already be made for us,
No.
or will we still be early enough in the process so we can?
No, the machinery of the RPP stuff is we're not up against any kind of deadline or anything right now. It's purely, it's pretty much conjecture at the moment.
Great.
And then we're also talking about the new development on Light Street and where they're going to park in different this is very evolving issue, and it's very involved because the residents in these new buildings aren't required to pay for parking, and so they're also squeezing people out as well. So this is a very interesting issue again, where it's guaranteed that people are going to get very upset. All right, so Evan, did that? Are you good with that? Okay, great. Any other new business before we take a motion to adjourn? Nope. Motion to adjourn. All right. Have a great month, and call us if you need us. And thank you everyone for attending out there in TV land and also here in person.